Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Saturday's live show. So let's see if we're going to get any viewers tonight. Let's see if we're going to get any good conversations tonight. Is it going to be a boring Saturday night, or is it going to be a partying Saturday night? Let's see. My name is Mick, and I host Movies TV Mad. We predominantly talk DC live action, the DC universe, but I'm also very interested in all walks of life in the entertainment industry. I love James Bond, I love Doctor Who, I love Star Wars, I love Star Trek. I like a lot of films you haven't heard of before. David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, Casualties of War, Born on the 4th of July. You name it, I know about it. So come in and have a chat with me. Talk about DC. Talk about your favorite movies, maybe your favorite sitcoms, anything. My knowledge of entertainment is vast and wide, and I'm here to talk to you. And if you love me, smash that like button. If you're new, please think about subscribing. It will not cost you a penny, right? Probably one of the few bald YouTubers. That's a record, isn't it? Worth the like, worth the follow. Let's have a conversation. So I've jotted a few things down tonight to talk about. So the Hollywood Reporter has confirmed that it is likely that James Gunn will direct Superman Legacy. Now, James has already said he can't work on Peacemaker 2 because he's going to be busy working on Superman Legacy, which means he's probably already decided to direct the movie. This is a huge movie. This is the launch pad for DC Universe. This will be the entry point. This will be the first movie. So this is going to be extremely important. And above all of that, he's got to make a Superman movie that makes Superman relevant, because many people have tried. Bryan Singer, Zack Snyder, and they failed to make Superman relevant. It's as simple as that. In fact, the only people to make Superman relevant in the past 35 years are the producers and creators of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and the producers of Smallville. And in Smallville, he doesn't even wear the costume. So what a feat that was. So it's a huge responsibility. Could be career suicide for James, or it could really launchpad him. James Gunn is a writer-director who's never wrote or directed a billion-dollar movie. Do I think that's a bad thing? Am I concerned about that? No, I'm not. Ahmed Hickow, hey, Movies TV Mad, let's Superman talk. Let's Superman talk. I'm doing it, so you do it. So what else have I jotted down? Would Austin Butler make a great Superman? He made a great Elvis Presley. I think he would make a great Superman. Let's talk about it. I'm asking, is Man of Steel just a good film and a bad Superman movie? Let me know what you think. And do we think that Ezra Miller will be involved in the marketing and help to promote the Flash movie? What they could do is use the excuse, the blag, that he's still in recovery from his mental health problems. So we will see what happens there. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. But what do you want to talk about tonight? Let me know. So Ahmed Hickow is in the chat. Ahmed Hickow, a good movie with a good Superman. Fair enough. I think that Henry Cavill is a good Superman. I love Man of Steel, but it isn't without its problems. Kumanil or Masid, I'm sorry that I just murdered your name. Who do you reckon will be the big baddie in this DCU Darkseid or Brainiac? Considering this is Gods and Monsters, chapter 1's called, I think you've got more chance of Darkseid. But I have a feeling he's not going to use Darkseid. He's going to use someone else as the big bad. I'm not sure who, but I think we could be looking at someone maybe from the Constantine side of things. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe not. It could be another. There are other gods in the DC universe. Could be one of the new gods. So might be Darkseid. I think that might be too obvious. And I think James is not going to use Darkseid because he's been used recently. But I could be wrong. John, hey Mick, what are some of your favorite Bond soundtracks? Oh, I love the Moonraker, All Time High. I love that song. I loved, even though people think it's not a really good Bondy song, I love the Casino Royale title song as well, John. Live and Let Die, absolute classic. A View to a Kill, Duran Duran, The Living Daylights by Aha, who were a great band back in the day. Yeah. So, I think like most of the modern ones, like after Casino Royale, didn't really bowl me over. Not even Skyfall is all that as far as I'm concerned. So I think lately it hasn't been great, if you ask me. So very good evening to you, John. So yeah, I think that Man of Steel is a good Superman. Well, I think it's more of a good film than a good Superman film. I think it's not without its issues, and I think it's one of those things where a bunch of people decide to do certain things but don't consider the brand. John, I really enjoyed the GoldenEye soundtrack. Oh, yeah, that's a really good one. And, of course, Tina Turner, GoldenEye is brilliant, isn't it? Kumani Al-Masid. My favourite Bond soundtrack is always GoldenEye by legend Tina Turner. She really is a legend. Yeah, what a great career that she's had. Yeah, so listen, if we look at the Connery films, the Moore films, they really had great soundtracks and great title songs. And I think like License to Kill by Gladys Knight, I like that one as well. But I think in terms of the whole soundtracks of the movies, yeah, I think John Barry did a lot of the like composed music as well, which was absolutely fantastic. Smash a like on the video, please. Let's get it on a positive note and give me some likes. But yeah, and I think, James Bond is, famous for great music. It is one of those just unique music-y franchises. I think James Gunn would have had a lot of fun with a Bond movie because he loves soundtracks. He loves those mixtapes. Will Superman Legacy have a mixed tape? That'd be interesting. I wonder if anyone's asked him that. Will it have a mixed tape? Will all his movies in DC have a mixed tape or not? Or is he going to maybe not do that anymore? We'll have to wait and see. Ahmed Hikar, Movies TV Man. I don't agree with James Gunn directing Superman Legacy. There is a great risk from fans since he didn't continue with Henry Cavill, and if he misses the movie up, it will be risky. Is that really a good reason for him not to direct a movie that he's written? I don't think that's a good enough reason. It's like saying, I once said to a restaurant owner, fish and chip shop, whatever, I didn't like one of their meals, so I shouldn't go in there again. No. And again, I'll bring back the fact that Zack Snyder rejected a petition to make Brandon Routh the Man of Steel and DCEU Superman. Does that mean he shouldn't have directed Man of Steel? Of course not. Ahmed, I don't think that's a good enough reason for him not to direct it. Life's about, will you fail? Will you succeed? He's in charge here, and he's writing this Superman movie. I think he probably will direct this movie. There's a little chance that he won't, but because he said he's not doing Peacemaker 2 because of this movie, I think that he is. Is it a risk? Who knows? He's writing the film, so he may as well direct it. It's the biggest film because it's the first entry point of DC Universe, and DC Universe is his and Peter's vision, and Peter isn't going to direct anything because he ain't a director. So I'm not opposed to him doing it. John, I don't think Ezra Miller will be part of the Flash marketing, but I could be wrong. Kamanj or Masid, when Henry Cavill was let go as Superman, I felt crestfallen, so did I. Similar to the time when I felt heartbroken when Pierce Brosnan was let go as James Bond to pave the way for Daniel Craig. And Daniel Craig at first ended up quite well. I don't think he ended the franchise very well, and I think he got a bit too big for his boots, but that ended up okay. I was very annoyed with James at first over the removal of Henry Cavill, but I wasn't exactly, even though I was happy for Henry when he came back, I was thinking, is this going to work? Is someone all of a sudden becoming a different type of Superman going to work? He was a bit of a darker, broodier Superman. Can you just turn him into the Christopher Reeve Superman? When he hasn't been that all along. So I did see the red flag with Henry coming back. And ultimately, because I was a fan of a full reboot, I do think it's the right decision. I love Henry as Superman, But ultimately, I think it is the right decision, especially with what James is trying to create something new here as well. At the end of the day, it didn't work out for Henry because of the people running it, because of the kind of Superman they turned him into. And when I saw Justice League in cinemas and I saw what they did to him and Ben, I just said, we're never going to see them as Batman and Superman again. We saw Henry in a post-credit scene. We're going to see Ben in the first act of the Flash movie, and I'm very excited for everyone to see how great Ben is in that sequence, because even Ben said it's his favorite Batman stuff he's done in DC so far. So that says a lot. Ahmed Hicko, if he messes up a movie, how can we trust him with his new role as a head of DC Studios? But that, Ahmed, is how, he may not mess up. We don't know. I may have my first go against you in Monopoly and not get a 666, but I may get a 666. Do you understand? In that it's no good talking in that context because he hasn't messed up the movie yet. If the movie was to be bad and the first movie failed, then of course they would be in a lot of trouble. But you could look at anything along those lines. Please press the like button, people. Come on. Ahmed, that's why I'm saying it's risky. Everything's risky, Ahmed. Personally, I don't think there's any logic in what you're saying. Yes, he could mess up, but he may not. Anyone writing anything, there was a little site called Emmerdale Farm in the UK. They were going to cancel it, and then a prolific creative said, you're not going to cancel that. They wanted him to create a new soap. He said, no, we're going to continue with Emmerdale Farm. We're going to cut the farm out, and we're going to call the village Emmerdale where the farm is. And 20, 30 years later, Emmerdale is still going. You make decisions. You've got to stand by your decisions, Ahmed. And, there's always a risk of failing. Because on the logic of what you're talking about, we would never leave our front doors. You're saying to James Gunn, he shouldn't do something just in case he fails. He is the showrunner of DC Universe. He's the one who's composing this whole thing. So this is the first movie of the DC Universe. It's utterly important. So, to him, he wants to conduct the orchestra because he's the one with his name on the door anyway. So I don't see the problem. He's already writing it, Ahmed. He's already writing it. So he may as well direct it. Kamal Al-Masid, why is the current pop culture generation is so stuck and obsessed with Christopher Reeve's Superman of 70s and cannot embrace a grounded, solemn version of Superman of his age portrayed by Henry? Well, I'm going to explain it to you as simply as I can, Kaminil, and I'm going to try and do it as respectfully as possible because I don't know where you sit, if you're a Snyderverse fan or not. But I do see a lot of disrespect from Snyderverse fans with the more popular Superman, which is Christopher Reeve. Let me give you a comparison. A lot of people think Sean Connery, the first James Bond, is the best James Bond. Now, he wasn't my first James Bond, Roger Moore was. So he's my favorite James Bond. But I don't go shitting on the other James Bonds, by the way. So the reason why people love Christopher Reeve so much is because Richard Donner made the first superhero movie and made one of the best superhero movies. And they were faithful with the source material and who Superman is. Now, in terms of Henry Cavill's Superman, he is a contemporary Superman, but he's the stark opposite of what he is in the source material. He kills. He causes explosions and doesn't seem too bothered when people are dying. Superman isn't a somber character, Kaminil, and this is part of the problem. They were trying to make Superman a real-world Superman. You can't put a character like Superman in the real world. He's wish fulfillment. He's a fantasy character. He's supposed to lift us up. He's supposed to inspire us. And I think you can be a fan of the Snyder Superman, but he isn't what he is in the comics. He isn't the inspiration. Now, he may be an inspiration to you and to others, and this is why people dialed back from that version. Ahmed Hicko, I got you. John, if Black Adam had made $1 billion, do you think WB would have let Henry Cavill go? This is what would have happened in my book. I think that Black Adam would have been in its own little box, its own little department. And I think that Henry would have been trapped within the Black Adam franchise, but he still wouldn't be James Gunn's Superman. He would never be James Gunn's Superman. So if he made money, they would have had to try and do something. There'll be no escape for them. But I don't think that Henry Cavill was ever going to be James Superman, just like Brandon Routh, despite a petition with 1 million signatures on it, begging for him to make Brandon his Superman, was never going to be Zack's Superman. In fact, it's the same situation. But Snyder fans seem to ignore the Brandon Routh thing. Karma's a bitch, right? So if Black Adam was a success, it would have been locked into its own little thing. It's clear that's what The Rock wanted, to be able to run his little bit of the DC universe. So Henry would be Superman there, I suppose. It would have been, listen, I think the more you look at the Black Adam situation, the more messy it is. And maybe it failing worked out for the best. I mean, if we want to take it deeper, coming in your question, there's a bit in BVS where Superman says, no one stays good in this world. This is the stark contrast of who Superman is. Superman cannot be saying that. And I love Man of Steel. I love BVS. But you can't have Superman saying that shit. And this is why people were upset. People have been following this character all their lives. They know Smallville was faithful to who Superman is. Pure and good. Yes, sometimes he was a red K and he turned bad. But ultimately, the character is what the character is expected to be. And so when I hear Snyder fans saying, what's wrong with Superman killing? That's why you don't get the character. If you think it's fine for Superman to kill, blatantly. We're not just talking about killing. We're talking about him grabbing hold of someone's neck and twisting it. What child can be taken to see that and be uplifted, as I was with Superman the movie? These are logical arguments against what Snyder, Goya, and Nolan were doing. That's the kind of thing you have to earn the right to do in an Elseworld, not in a central universe. That's why it didn't work out. And as you know, that's the thing. Camille L. Messenger. Do you feel that Margot Robbie will be retained as Harley Quinn by James Gunn in his new DCU? I think if he remained as the person running his Suicide Squad universe and not the co-CEO of DC Studios, that would be a simple yes. I think the Margot Robbie situation has become very complicated since Birds of Prey. And because he came in very quickly, he brought her on to the Suicide Squad. But I think he would have kept her. I don't know if he's going to keep her now. I'm not too sure about that. I have my doubts, but I'm not saying there's no way she will come back. Personally, I'd rather they recast her. I don't like her feminism. I don't like what she did to Birds of Prey. I think it's disgusting. And her toxic commentary against men in that film. So I think she's a problem. I think she's problematic. And I'd rather her be recast, but we will see. I would not be crying any tears if we never saw Margot Robbie again as Harley Quinn, because I don't think she's the only person who can play Harley, unlike some people. There's a brilliant actress playing her in the animated universe right now. She looks great. She could be a great Harley Quinn, but there's so many options out there, but we will see. Agwin Higgo, Snyder gave us an answer for the question of what if Superman was with us. It's a realistic take. It's amazing. That's my point, Ahmed. Superman has no place in the real world. I love Man of Steel and BVS, but the point is, that's what I've just been saying, Ahmed. Superman doesn't belong in the real world. He's wish fulfillment. He's someone who catches us when we fall. He's someone who uplifts children. He's someone who's pure and inspirational. The last thing people wanted to see, you and a few others, yes, fair enough, but the last thing pre-Man of Steel Superman fans wanted to see is putting Superman in the real world. It simply isn't who he is. And I think if you watch the animated movie, Superman versus the Elite, you'll really understand who Superman is in the comics and how people love him to be. So, yes, I didn't need that question asking, Ahmed. Millions of people around the world didn't need Superman being put in the real world. And that's the issue, and that's people's problem with it as well. I think, as much as I love Man of Steel, putting a character like Superman in the real world is problematic. That's why Alan Moore created Watchmen, so he didn't bring existing DC characters into the real world and, urinate on them. This is a thing. This is why the people who were in charge of the original DCEU, these are the kind of people you have in charge of Elseworlds. People that can do whatever they want, who want to make, they want to make, fan films, really. Films, basically stuff, they want to do whatever they want and stuff what people think. But ultimately, we're talking about DC, WB's #1 IP. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And it triggered people. It was utterly divisive and it didn't work. Just like having Luke Skywalker being a bitter old man. There's a logical thing of saying in the real world, Luke Skywalker probably would have grew old into a bitter old man. But we don't want to see Luke Skywalker in the real world. We want to see an older version of the younger version. That might not be a realistic take, but people wanted to see Luke training Padawans, trying to help the next generation of Jedis protect the New Republic. And we didn't get to see that. Hiko, it's always easy to put Superman in a fantasy movie because, as you said, he doesn't belong in the real world. So Snyder came with a unique type of storytelling. It's unique. You can call it unique, but look at the results of it, Ahmed. Look at the results. Look at the reaction from the public. This is a business, Ahmed. And Superman is not a character who should be put in the real world. So we can call it unique, but we can also say that it antagonized most hardcore Superman fans, because what you're doing is you're fundamentally changing the character. You're changing him dramatically, and he's not Superman anymore. He's somebody else. Once you make him a real character and you drag him through the mud and, you have people wanting to lynch him and kill him. David Goyer, the writer of Man of Steel, said an interesting thing. He goes, he thought it was silly in Superman the movie that everyone trusted Superman inherently because it's a fantasy, my friend. It's a beautiful thing. It's a fantasy of having a pure hero we can rely on. That is what Superman is. That's the point of Superman. It's not silly in a fantasy movie, for children and for adults and children to sit there together, parents and uncles and nieces and nephews and kids. That's who Superman is. And to say, you know what, no, that's crap. Let's just drag him through the mud and make him like us. We don't want to make him like us, right? We want to make him better than us. In his heart and his soul, Superman is better than us because Superman holds back his temper. Superman has to be better than all of us. And when you say, nah, he's in the real world, he's just the same as us, there's no point to him. It's like Ryan Johnson saying anyone can be a Jedi. That's dull, that's boring, and you take away that wish fulfillment. And that's the thing. There's certain characters you cannot do this with. And ultimately, the entertainment industry is a consumer business. And when you start shaving against the grain, because this is what the modern day creative auteur wants to do, shave against the grain, subvert expectations. Now, in the movie Seven, they subverted expectations in a great way with Gwyneth Paltrow's head being in Kevin Spacey's box. Now, that was a very exciting twist. Dexter finding his wife dead in a pool of blood and his son just sitting in a pool of blood was a good way of subverting expectations. But killing off Snoke in The Last Jedi is not good subversion because you take the best thing out of it. An interesting, intriguing villain. So you may have surprised us, but in an underwhelming way. And this is what the modern creative simply doesn't understand, because the modern creative, the modern auteur, is making films and entertainment for themselves and not for the consumer in a consumer business. It's like taking all the Coca-Colas off the shelf and saying Coca-Cola has been around for too long. It's time for a new drink. Who in their fucking right mind would do that if you want to make money? John, what are your thoughts on Mark Hamill not wanting to voice Joker again? Well, his good friend who voiced Batman died, and that's his reason. So I totally respect that. He's voiced the Joker a lot of times. You know, he ain't getting any younger, and he doesn't want to do it anymore. And I think that's perfectly fine. And if you're in love with his Joker, I think he's a great Joker. I think you can go back and watch the rerun. So it's his, you know, people are allowed to do what they want. And, you know, it's out of respect for a good friend. It's a moral thing. It's a moral thing. And he doesn't want to be the Joker to another Batman. And I don't blame him. And I think that's a very, very wholehearted, pure thing for Mark to want to do. So, yeah, I'm totally behind that decision, of course. Who am I to tell Mark Hamill that he's wrong about his career choices? And so what you're going to find with the new DC universe is not people shaving uphill. In a lot of ways, this slate announcement gave me what I expected, a proper slate that excites the general DC fans. Yes, Snyderverse fans will say this is mid, this is this. The fandom menace will say this is bad. They're using that writer, they're using that woke comic book writer, whatever they're saying. But the general audience saw that slate and got very excited. Hardcore DC fans who are not being represented within the DCEU are excited about this slate. That's the point. And none of you have still liked this video. Adwin Hiccup, don't you think it will be boring if we always make the same Superman theme over and over again? Right. So should James Bond no longer be a spy anymore? Licensed to kill, who's ruthless? Do you want James Bond, just for a change, to be a nicey bloke who doesn't bed women, who doesn't do his thing, and is not an interesting character anymore? Do you think that would be boring if we changed it? That's the point. What you're saying, Ahmed, is it's boring that Superman is always got the same personality. That's who Superman is, right? That's who Superman is. This is not Doctor Who, where you can change the actor and you can have some nuance in a kind of different way of doing Doctor Who. It's, at the end of the day, it's you know, that isn't boring, because people love Superman for that reason. And I think for you to say that, you're probably not much of a Superman fan. You're probably not an appreciator of the character. And that's fine. Go and support someone else. But to demand that Superman isn't Superman anymore, again, lacks logic. John, just send you a like. Thank you, John. Everyone left the chat once I asked for a like. They actually would have rather left the chat than give me a like. Imagine that. They may think I make money out of the likes. Jesus Christ. People astonish me. People astonish me. They really do. They wanted to ask me questions. I responded. Really brilliant answers as far as I'm concerned. And people don't want to like the video. What's that about? Thank you, John. I appreciate my one like. Be like John. This is Movies TV Mad. I am Mick, your host with the most. Ask your girlfriends and your wives. Don't let your girlfriends and your wives watch my YouTube channel. They're going to fall in love. They're going to want me to make love to them. So you don't want them to make love to me. So don't introduce them to me or anything like that. So we're talking DC. We're talking anything in entertainment you want. A great result for my team, Manchester United, today. Casemiro went insane, but we won the game, and I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy with Manchester United's season. Very happy with our manager, Erik ten Hag. I think he's had to deal with some very challenging issues this year. But carry on. Let's carry on with the chat. We're talking DC. We're talking entertainment. So hit me with your comments and your questions, and what you're thinking of and what you're hoping for. What are you anticipating to watch this year? Are you excited Tomorrow night in America during the Super Bowl, there's finally going to be a Flash trailer. If you're in Europe, I think you have to wait till Monday. I may stay up to watch it and react to it. So look out for that. So very excited. Finally, a 2-minute plus trailer for the Flash movie, the most important movie in the history of DC because it's changing the timeline. Ahmed Hickow, I'm not saying we should change his personality, but see him from a different perspective. The strong, powerful Superman, what he would struggle with. Well, here's the thing. For 10 seasons on Smallville, we saw him struggle as a teenager. We saw him having to come to terms with a different power for several seasons. And it was done in a beautiful way without making him a dark, bitter, character and a somber character. It's the way of doing it. So, we can have a powerful Superman, but you don't want to look at the problem with having him overpowered. Now, in Justice League, Zack has him beating the shit out of Steppenwolf, easily defeating him. And in the end, I don't think that actually works because he was too powerful. It was too easy for him. And you've got to be careful how you frame Superman. So it's an interesting point you make, but no, Superman has great powers. But he's also a very good person. And he also doesn't believe in killing. And you could say that he had no choice but to kill Zod. Well, that was the writer, David Goyer. He gave him no choice but to kill Zod. So I don't think what we're talking about here is actually changing him. You can say, oh, look at these powers. He has to deal with these powers. There's more positive ways of dealing with that. You can still do that without turning him into something he's not. John, did you ever see the live-action Scooby-Doo movie? No, I've never seen the Scooby-Doo movies. I've seen like a few minutes of them and they look okay. I mean, look, I'm a big fan of the old animation, but yeah, I don't need to see live-action Scooby-Doo films. What I did see for the first time was the A-Team movie. I saw the A-Team movie starring Liam Neeson. And Bradley Cooper. And I refused to watch that for years because I thought it was going to be disrespectful to the series. But actually, I thought it was a solid movie. Not perfect, but a solid movie. And it made me remember how much I loved the A-Team and how I loved the fact that Murdoch is a mentally ill man who's supposed to be in an asylum, but he achieves all this stuff. He's a hero despite his mental illness. And it just shows you can represent mentally ill people in a positive way. And also the kind of thing that Murdoch and BA hate each other, but actually they actually love each other. They just don't know how to show it. That's something else that was kind of deep with the A-Team, because people have the impression about the A-Team it was like kind of an alpha male thing, but actually there was some quite deep themes in there if you looked hard enough for them. And it made me appreciate one of the shows I grew up with. Abba Hickow, movies TV mad. Did you like the Man of Steel movie? I do, but it's not without its problems. It's a problematic movie, but it's a good movie. I like it. I like Man of Steel. It's a stunning looking film. It's full of action. There's lots of crash bang wallop. I like the film. I've always liked the film. I saw it 2 or 3 times in the cinema, I think 3. So I did like it. But at the end of the day, right, look at the results to that film. You can't go against the consumer, my friend. Ahmed Hickow, rate it out of 10. I think Man of Steel as a film is probably, to me, around 7, maybe 7 or 8 out of 10. So I think it's a good movie that I enjoyed. But then you have to ask the deeper questions, the consumer's reaction, the box office. And at the end of the day, it is about the box office. Did it work? Didn't it work? What are the issues with it? The idea of Superman killing and not at least having him say at the end when he's standing over his father's gravestone, I know what it's like to kill. I don't want to feel that way again. At least have him have the concession that he doesn't want to feel that way again. Ahmed Hickow, rate it out of 10. Ahmed Hickow, for me, it's a 9. I think it's a good film. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it. It's a really good film. I think sensory in terms of visually. And, like the audio and things like that. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful to look at. I think they totally failed with the Clark and Lois relationship. I don't think they really did enough work on it. And I don't think they were very interested in taking their time with that relationship. But here you go. For me, it's underrated. Well, some people underrate it, some people overrate it. I suppose it depends who you talk to. I certainly think that it's a good film. I enjoyed it, as I did BVS. But fundamentally, when you're making films for the general audience, you've got to remember, that it's a business, that you're using a studio's money. You're not there to do your own fan fiction. And I think you could argue that the Snyderverse is someone's fan fiction, I think. And at the end of the day, it's not a hobby. We talk about, we talk about directors being allowed to express their own visionary ideas, but also you're working with other people's money. How can he be in a relationship if he's struggling to know himself? Well, he is in a relationship. He's in a relationship in BVS, and he's supposed to be in love with Lois in Man of Steel. So that's happening. Lots of people struggle with stuff and are still in relationships. Either a human or a Kryptonian. But he is in a relationship with Lois Lane. He is in a relationship. You can do two things at once. You can struggle with yourself and still have a relationship. Clark had a relationship with Lorna and Lois in Smallville and still had struggles. It depends if you're proficient enough as a storyteller to pull it off. So Smallville pulled off Lorna and Clark and Lois and Clark, all in one show, all in the space of a decade. John, and some of the actors from the TV show make a cameo in the A-Team movie. Yes, in the post-credit scene. Luckily, I didn't listen to Disney Plus and skip the end credits, and we saw Howling Murdoch and Dirk Benedict as Face. I wonder why Mr. T. It's a shame Mr. T wasn't involved. Adrian Hickok, not in Man of Steel. Well, they do kiss in the end. They do kiss in the end, don't they? And she's pretty much there for the whole adventure. But your point is that someone who's struggling with themselves can't be in a romantic relationship. And I have to say this to you, Ahmed, I think that's utter nonsense, because many people struggle with themselves and are in relationships. But they didn't really handle. I think they handled Lois. I think Lois as a character is handled really well in Man of Steel. Handled badly, I think, in Justice League, where she's a whimpering mess, but she's not that reporter anymore. And if you read The Death of Superman, she's a lot more braver and bolder as a reporter and as a person after Superman dies. So I think they got her wrong in the Snyder Cut. Ahmed Hickow, yeah. So I don't think they really pulled off the Clark and Lois relationship because they couldn't be bothered to spend enough time with it, because Snyder's more interested in the visual journey, the epicness. And I don't think he's proficient enough to tell a love story. I don't think he has that in his locker to be able to do it. And one of the most important things about Superman is his relationship. This is why he couldn't be bothered to do Jimmy Olsen. Edward Hegel, how can he manage the relationship? He can't manage his own self and doesn't know his place in the world. Right, let me repeat myself, because I don't like going around in circles, Ahmed. It's like a tennis match, right? There are many people in life who can't manage their self, right? Who have struggles, mental health struggles, lots of things, disabilities. Much worse than what Superman goes through in Man of Steel, in terms of inherently. And they're in relationships. So I've already answered that question, right? And the point is, that is going on because it's in the script. And what I'm telling you is the romance between Clark and Lois and Superman and Lois is one of the most important things in Superman's story. And it's reason why people love Superman the movie, because it's dealt with in such a great way. I mean, identity-wise, well, again, there's people, I don't really know where we're going with this, Ahmed, because at the end of the day, it's the stuff that's in Man of Steel is in the script, but they literally ignore the strength of the relationship between Clark and Lois and Superman and Lois. It's there, but it's lazily dealt with. It's lazily handled. As I say, I fundamentally love Man of Steel, but I can't pretend just because I like something that there's no issues with it. And at the end of the day, you go and watch the Lois and Clark New Adventures Superman show. You go and watch Smallville. You go and watch Superman the movie, and they handled the romantic element. Now, Superman the movie, still has great action. It manages to balance everything. And the point is that relationship is so important to the fans. And he ignored it or rushed through it. John, there was too many storylines in BVS. I don't mind a multitude of storylines. That's fine. I'm used to watching soap operas. I don't mind that. So I don't mind what they're trying to do in the film in terms of Lex Luthor. Basically, because the idea is of Superman being rejected. So that's their film. Okay, listen, with every relationship there is responsibility. How can he handle it if he can't handle who he is? Again, Ahmed, we're going around in circles because I've given you this answer. In real life, because you're so happy with the real life Superman, people can't handle what it is to be them. But there are in relationships. Now, we're talking about a real world Superman, and in the real world, so of course, we're not asking him to juggle 6 balls at the same time, right? Ultimately, inherently, the relationship to Superman fans, I'll say it slowly, I'll tell you slowly, right? That's a very important, fundamental relationship. And you can't skip over it with a blag, with a con, and saying, well, he's not comfortable with himself, so how can he be in a relationship, right? He's not comfortable with himself in the second movie either, but he's fucking living with Lois Lane and banging her in the bathroom, right? So what's the difference, right? You can even say he's got more problems in BVS and he's banging Lois Lane in the bathroom, right? So what's the difference? People want to see the Lois and Clark relationship. It's important. MSGT in the house, Mick. What's up? I'm here, I'm up, and I'm ready to talk, MSGT, and welcome to the chat. Fundamentally, there were some own goals in the Snyderverse. And I got you, but you can't blame Snyder for giving us his unique take. Snyder can only be Snyder. Snyder should never have been in charge of a franchise for the general audience because he said himself he doesn't care about the general audience. Then you shouldn't be making stuff for the general audience because that's what the studio wanted. But it was their fault and their mistake for bringing in Nolan, who brought in Snyder in the first place. It's a Pandora's box. And once you open Pandora's box, you can't fucking shut it again. And this is why they've had so many problems moving away from Snyder and trying to find something to appeal to the general audience. And there's something else. Snyder was literally trying to adapt, in a way, injustice. Imagine if he told the audience before Man of Steel came out that we're looking to adapt Injustice. I think the audience would have been a lot more understanding and said, yes, this is how an Injustice live action movie should be. This is awesome. And all the gamers would have come in, but they didn't do that. Lack of communication. All this week, we've seen James Gunn communicating with the audience, telling them what to expect. So there's no misunderstandings. MSGT, per your question, it will come down to whether or not Gunn would trust another director to start his DCU. This movie can make or break it all. Exactly. And I think as he's writing it, I think he probably feels he should guide the ship because he's writing it anyway. And I think he will direct it. I think it's a very important film because it's not just about this film will introduce, there'll be cameos. This will be setting the stall out for this brand new universe. I think Batman will be in this film. I think we will see other corners of the new universe in this film. So I think this is why I think he feels he should do it. And he's already said because of this film, he can't do Peacemaker 2, which makes me think that he's already decided, as the Hollywood Reporter have reported, that he's going to direct Superman Legacy. Ahmed Hickow, with every documentary I watch about the movie, there are new massage that I discover in-depth analysis of what Snyder wanted. It's amazing, his message throughout the movie. There's a lot of fantastic things in that movie. Yes, there's environmental commentary. You know, there's the facts that NASA are going out looking for new planets and using world engines to cater them for human beings. Exactly what Zod is doing on Earth. I think it's amazing. Look, the film is great, and a lot of the stuff he's doing is great. But there's two conversations to be had. A great movie, but the general audience didn't want this for Superman, and that's the business side. So this is the kind of film you make. It's like Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Clark Kent. That will be in the Elseworlds. So that won't interfere with a connective universe. So people will be more forgiving, right? Because it's going to be a kind of independent movie, something that can be a standalone, can have a freedom about it. And I think so, yes. Fundamentally, Man of Steel and BVS have got these great themes and these great Easter eggs and these great things. Zack's a great director, and I love Zack. But it wasn't the right thing for this kind of audience. And it's the studio's fault for allowing this to happen. Would I be without Man of Steel? No, I love Man of Steel. Would I be without BVS? No. Would I be without the Snyder Cut? Of course not. These, as you say, are unique films. But it doesn't mean I'm blind to the situation and that we are where we are now with James Gunn and these situations because of what happened there. Zack Snyder's a man who should be in the Elseworld, not serving the general audience, because he doesn't give a shit about the general audience. This guy's a rebel. I mean, he's a gladiator. Look how he got his Snyder Cut released. I mean, the man's a fucking warrior. Amazing man. So I can like his films, but I can say fundamentally they were damaging to the kind of mainstream brand that they needed to make the money. And Hickow, Ahmed Hickow, what do you think of the idea of Snyder directing a Flash solo movie? He will answer the cues of what if a man can move faster than light lives in our world. I'm getting chills. I think fundamentally that will be very interesting, but I don't think the point of the Flash, obviously is the point of the Flash that he can move these speeds, but fundamentally it's about a hero and about what motivates a hero and how they balance their lives and their heroes and their dual identity, you know. So and I think, you know, and then there's the romance with Iris West and thing. This is the things people want to see, especially a general audience. And I just think Zack Snyder's not right for a general audience. Again, if he was doing a Flash Elseworld movie, that would be great. That would be interesting. But in terms of the DCU that James Gunn is trying to integrate as a connected universe, no, Snyder's never getting in that world. Never. Because they tried that. They've tried that. They've tried Snyder for the general audience. And, I could have told them that wasn't going to work. MSGT, unless something happens way down the road, Snyder is finished with DC. If Rebel Moon is a hit, he will dive deep into a new world. Yeah, listen, I suspect that Rebel Moon will be a big hit and utterly damaging for Star Wars as well, as Snyder shows how it should be done. I mean, he's even got a female lead in it, right? But yeah, I think the DC stuff, I mean, unless James Gunn knows something that he's not telling us, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's not looking likely. I mean, he still wants to do DC. There's no question about that. Make no mistake, he still wants to do the DC stuff. And he's quite happy for his fans to push for the Netflix stuff, because that will be a great opportunity for him. But yeah, it's unlikely, but nothing's impossible. We thought the Snyder Cut being released was unlikely. So nothing's impossible, but right now it's not looking very, very likely. But in this business, as we know, anything can happen. Henry Cavill being in a Black Adam post-credit scene didn't seem possible. Them bringing Dallas back after all those years and having 3 more seasons and, giving J.R. Ewing such a great death and a great funeral and, honouring Larry Hagman for what he did on the show for 13 years. So in this business, there's no such thing as impossibilities. Anything's possible. If it'll make money and if it'll get butts in seats, they will do absolutely anything. Nothing's dead in this industry. Nothing is impossible. As unlikely as it seems, you just don't know at this point. So, yeah. Abahiko, it's been a good talk, Movies TV Man. Got to run through the Speed Force. Let's exchange different opinions again. Do a live again soon and let's DC talk. See you around. Thank you very much, Ahmed. See you very soon. Thank you for the chat. Leave a like on your way out, please. The Legend CJ, good evening. I think they will end up doing Kingdom Come with Cavill in the future and with an old Ben Affleck. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, as I say never in this game. I think James Gunn may be trying to do a Kingdom Come right now. I don't know. Lots of people have theories about Kingdom Come and I think he may be integrating a Justice Society of America instead of a Justice League, but we will see. Ahmed Hickel done. Thank you very much, Ahmed. Very, very nice of you. I really do appreciate you. So, yeah, I mean, he hasn't mentioned the Justice League, and I keep on saying this because I think it's interesting, that there's been no mention of the Justice League. He's mentioned some things, but he's obviously keeping he's keeping everything close to his chest, So, yeah, anything's possible. Don't discount anything. And I think even in The Flash, we may get some cameos we're not expecting. I think it's that kind of thing. Now, you're supposed to see Linda Carter in the Flash movie. You're supposed to see Christopher Reeve in the Flash movie. CGI, obviously. Let's see what they do. I think what happens is a lot of the cameos you'll see are quick ones as Barry runs into the Speed Force. So I think a lot of those things that you see and have been promised are very fleeting, blink if you miss them. MSGT, I think the Justice League is a given. No way they will avoid it. It's just not in the immediate agenda. That's for sure. It's not in the immediate agenda. It's far too soon. The Legend CJ, I doubt Zachary Levi stays as Shazam. He will be too old to play his character by the end of the slate. Listen, I think all the DCEU people will be slowly phased out without any fuss, without any announcements. And I think we can see what he's basing his first stuff on. New Superman, new Batman, new Supergirl. Not that we've really got an old Supergirl, even though Sasha Calais is in The Flash. But she's not really a real true blue Supergirl. Anyway, she's a Flashpoint Supergirl that Hamada wanted to use in the new timeline. And I've got a feeling she won't be Supergirl going forward. And like Leslie Grace won't be, Batgirl going forward. She may play someone else to appease everyone. That would be interesting. But yeah. I think they've changed a lot. The Lantern show was going to be very different. And, I think that the Lantern show was the original one they were doing with the Arrowverse people was going to be very different. And a word I don't like, woke, I think it was going to be very, very woke. And Zaslav put a stop to that. MSGT, Levi is easy to replace. I don't think Gunn is trying to establish any of the Shazam stuff in the DCU right now. Yeah, Shazam and his world isn't important in the slightest. It doesn't really matter if you don't even have a Shazam. By the time that they may want to, it will be years from now. The Legend CJ, why was Batgirl unreleasable? Well, you have to ask someone who actually saw it, The Legend CJ. That's what they've said. It's unreleasable. I don't think that's the reason, because you could always make it releasable, couldn't you? I think that film I think it was very, very woke. Zaslav didn't like it and he stopped it. I think from the stuff that I know about the film, so I think they weren't happy with what the film was, rather than, maybe the quality of the film. Because apparently Batgirl's one test screening registered better than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and Black Adam. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. It certainly upset a lot of people. But unless you've seen it, I mean, look, Gunn and Safran and Zaslav have seen that film and they feel it wasn't releasable. But as I say, they could have made it releasable. They could have brought the quality to it, couldn't they? So, I mean, it'd be an interesting thing to see. I don't think they'll ever let you see it. I don't think it will be released in our lifetime. I think maybe in 30 years' time, when we're all dead, maybe it'll be released, and it won't be to any interest of anyone. MSGT, because it forced DC down the path of all the movies, only Batgirl was irreparable. The rest were fixed and headed towards release. I think the truth of the Batgirl situation will never be revealed. And I think you can take their word for it that it was unreleasable. But as I say, you can make it releasable. You can, at the end of the day, you can do that. You could delay it for a year. You could delay it for 2 years. But they didn't want to do that. And basically, don't forget as well, the problem with Batgirl, which is something they could have changed easy, is that Michael Keaton is Batman in there, in the new timeline. They don't want Michael Keaton as Batman in the new timeline. They want a younger Batman. MSGT also established Keaton. Yeah, that was a huge problem. I don't think Keaton had a lot of screen time. I think Keaton had around 20 minutes screen time in the whole film. The Legend CJ, when do you think they'll announce the new Batman? Well, I don't think I want to be clear about this because the Brave and the Bold Batman movie is not coming out in 2025 with Superman Legacy. Matt Reeves' The Batman 2 is coming out in the same year as Superman Legacy. So I think you'll probably talking about the year after for the Brave and the Bold Batman movie. So they really won't be announcing anything right now. So they're just going to take their time. There'll be no rush. They may surprise us all of a sudden and we hear who's playing Superman. But again, someone tried to rumour some actor as Superman and James Gunn got in their comments, as James does, and says, nah, that ain't happening. I haven't even got into the casting process yet. So be careful of the lies. That's something I asked. What do we think of Austin Butler as Superman? I think there's a big chance that Austin will get the gig because he's Mr. Warner Brothers right now. He's in June. I always say June. He's going to be in the June sequel. The Legend Day. MSGT, not a bad choice at all. Look, Austin. I mean, if you've seen the Elvis movie, very good actor. Very good actor. I think he's the right height. I think he's got the right, cheekbones. He would be perfect. You can dye his hair. I don't know what his natural hair color is anyway. But yeah, and I think, as I say, he's already there. He's with Warner Brothers. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. I think castings like this won't just be on James Gunn's shoulders or Safran's shoulders. This will be Adby and DeLuca together because Superman is going to be their flag. Do you understand? That's why he's the first movie. He's going to be the identity bracelet of the DCU. So it won't just be James Gunn and Peter Safran making the decision because he's so important to them. He's so important. And if James Gunn pulls off Superman and makes him relatable, it's going to be huge for them. So they're really thinking deeply about Superman Legacy. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting film. But I think it's going to be, he keeps on talking about All-Star Superman. But I think in terms of Superman versus the Elite, which justified Superman's legacy as a peaceful, pure-hearted hero who doesn't want to kill, I think you'll see a bit of that. You'll see the justification of who Superman is. And I think that's probably why it's called Superman Legacy, to basically get the foundations of his legacy, because his legacy since Man of Steel and BVS has been under some debate, and they want to settle the debate, I think, in this film once and for all. The Legend CJ, what do you think of Wolfgang Nogaritz for Superman? I've seen a few pictures. He looks okay. I mean, people just seem to have plucked him out as a fan cast out of their backsides. He looks good, but many people look good in a Superman costume. I don't know how people get obsessed with one actor. It just happens, I think. But he doesn't look like Bat, but I've never seen him in anything, so I can't just judge him on looks. Jason Augustine. I just saw the part of Elseworlds. It's still going to be Black Superman. At the moment, Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Black Clark Kent is in active development, Jason. Jason Augustine, if you're going to spend money on that, why wouldn't you simply finish Snyder's arc? Right, let's get into this. It's an interesting subject you've opened up. So basically what they're saying is that Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Clark Kent, Black Superman movie set in the 90s, independent of what they're doing in the DCU, is still in active development. So active development is where things go to die. But for all we know, this film could still actually happen. I'm not sure if it won't happen, but I'm not convinced it will happen. This is something that's been passed over from the last leadership, and I'm afraid Gunn and Safran are kind of stuck with it. They can't just dump it because there's contracts there. They paid Abrams a lot of money to partner up with him and Bad Robot, or Bad Reboot as the fandom menace call it. So, you know, I think it's not just the case of saying why they're doing that instead of Snyderverse. I don't think they have much of a choice. And they don't have Snyder under any contract. They're not trapped with him, but they're trapped with Abrams, and they might have to go through with this movie. I think the Snyderverse would be great in Elseworlds. I think the Snyderverse should have always been in a kind of an Elseworlds capacity. I've already had a discussion with someone else about how Snyder isn't right for the general audience because he doesn't care about making stuff for the general audience. So, yeah, I think the Snyderverse would be great, but unfortunately, that might not be what they want to do. Now, James Gunn said that DC Elseworlds, you have to do something, you have to hit a higher bar than you will in DCU to get into DC Elseworlds. So I think they're going to be standalone movies, but the quality will be so much higher than what we see in DC Universe. They're going to be proper auteur movies. So, you know, that may not be what they're looking to do. MSGT, yeah, I think you are right. Never cared for Superman until MOS, but I'd like to see a real good, pure Superman now. Jason Augustine, thanks for your thoughts, Mick. You are welcome to Jason. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, this is the thing, MSGT, isn't it? I think we've seen that Superman for 3 films. So now we can go back to doing like the other Superman that everybody likes. It's a business. It's a business. And they need to please as many people as they can. So they're not going to take any liberties initially. If they become successful, you'll see a few more liberties being taken. And that might damage the thing. But we'll see. Right now, I think they really are going to try and please people for now. We'll see how long that carries on for. The casting is going to be very, very interesting. And we'll soon find out if this is a new broom that sweeps clean or if this is a bunch of more nut jobs making crazy decisions and shaving against the grain. We will find out. MSGT, I tend to like everything. The way I see it, I have a fantastic Snyder trilogy. No reason why the mainstream shouldn't get what they want. Now, I'm sure I will like it too. Well, hopefully we all like it. Hopefully this is a DC universe we can all be proud of and a DC Elseworlds that we can all be proud of. And, as I say, I'm very excited by the slate, especially the Swamp Thing horror movie. And especially if it's by the director who did Logan, who's doing Indy 5. I mean, that's just James Mangold. That's just very, very exciting. If James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to these types of people, this is exciting. Who's going to direct Batman? I mean, is James going to write and direct Batman as well? Is he going to? So will that film take longer or is he got someone else in mind to do that film? I discussed today that maybe Ben Affleck could direct an Elseworlds Batman movie, nothing to do with the Snyderverse, and that would be interesting as well because he's a big fan. Very big Batman fan. His knowledge on Batman is infinite, and he could do something with DC Elseworlds. So yeah, I mean, for me, I know what I want from DC. I mean, I'm not a closed book. I'm not, there are parameters. There's a big parameter that I would accept. I don't mind lighter stuff as long as it's balanced well and it has a bit of drama in it, and there is like great characterizations. I think the characterizations are always important in any story. The story has to be great, but the character to care about the characters. If you don't care about the characters, it simply doesn't work. In terms of the mistakes I think they did with Batfleck is you got this older Batman who's already done everything. And for me, it's like, well, what's the point in you? I've not seen Robin getting murdered. I wanted to see that, right? Before the Snyder Cut, we'd never seen the Joker, Leto's Joker and Batman together. I mean, it was good that we saw kind of Deadshot and Batman in the 2016 Suicide Squad. I think that's probably one of my highlights of that movie. That we got lots of Batfleck in that movie. And Batfleck is great. But the problem being older, he's literally done everything. He's had all the Robins, right? He's had all the Robins already. So what is there, where is there for him to go? Another thing with BVS, we see, I think with the DC, in BVS, we see him in bed with a woman. Is that Selena Kyle? We don't know. It's not established. Nothing's established. I think it would have been interesting for him to have a little relationship with Selena Kyle and BVS. That would be fun. And maybe a love triangle between Wonder Woman and Selena Kyle and Batman would have been fun. The Legend CJ, a lot of new Superman fans really don't know how kind and compassionate he is and just base it off Snyder. I agree. Snyder Superman. I think they're going to be shocked with how much different Gunn's Superman will be. Oh, I think we all know where James Gunn's going with Superman. MSGT, I would like this. Great point, The Legend CJ. Great point. MSGT, I would like this DCU to set a tone that allows lighter and darker per the character. It has to be in a way that when they do a justice, the characters belong. Well, I think James has spoken about making each film and each TV show and animation its own thing and its own unique thing. So not everything's going to be the same. And I think that's what you're attempting to say. And I think that's what's going to happen. So I think, look, Gunn has a knowledge of comics. He has a knowledge of geek culture, and I think he understands. And I think he also understands that he's working for a big company that want to make money. Peter Safran said a great thing at the press conference. He said, we know how much is riding on this for Warner Brothers Discovery, for DC Studios, for everyone. This has to work. They understand that. There is no room for them to maneuver. They can't get this wrong. And they understand this. This is why there was a press conference to announce the first part of the slate. So I think mostly they've got things right. I mean, you could nitpick and say this and that. But ultimately, when I saw the presentation and the video that Gunn did, I think they're trying to be as straightforward as they can. Apparently, Warner, some ex-Warner Brothers, EPs weren't very happy with Gunn and Safran, doing the dirty on him, saying they weren't running things very well. But it is true, because Warner Brothers has barely made $1 billion movie in the last 10, 15 years. They've been a disaster zone. That's why Zaslav is needing to raise $3 billion in a hurry. It's a disaster. All this shit that you hear going on with Warner Brothers, it's not Zaslav's fault. Zaslav's cleaning up the mess. Zaslav's the fixer. And this is why they're talking about DC and DC Universe being so important for Warner Brothers Discovery. It's their biggest IP, and it has to work. Has to work. That's where the big money is, because let me explain something to you. In the old days, you saw a lot of films that didn't make a lot of money. You probably imagine that, like small films like Apocalypse Now and the little films, Dead Ringers, The Fly with David Cronenberg, Dead Ringers by David Cronenberg, weren't big money hitters. But what they used to do is these studios, they had their summer blockbusters, which brought in the money, which afforded them to have artists do artistic movies. And this is what Warner Brothers want to do. All studios actually want to do this, apart from Disney, that they want to get their IPs right. Because if Warner Brothers get their IPs right, then HBO can make more films for HBO Max, artistic films. and then they can release more artistic films and independent films through the cinematic system as well. And there's a balance. But to be able to afford to make the artistic films, you've got to get your IPs right, which is what's going on with DC Universe right now. The Legend said, Jay, you can't let Aquaman make more money than any of the other Trinity characters. Well, listen, it's the same company, so it's fine. It's fine. But obviously, you want Superman to make as much money, if not more. You know, what a great scenario. If Superman Legacy makes $2 billion, right? Like Spider-Man No Way Home money. Unlikely, but imagine it. So you want to make, look, these superhero films are important. A lot of people love them. People are talking about superhero fatigue, but people still want to go and see superhero movies. Good superhero movies. People will never tire of them. They won't be as much of a trend as they used to be, but people want to see a great Superman film. When I came out of a good movie as a kid, you thought you could rule the world. When even an unsuccessful film like Masters of the Universe, when I came out of there as a kid, we were in the garden. I'm He-Man, I'm Skeletor. That's what you want from children when they go and see a Superman movie. Not them having recurring nightmares about Superman breaking someone's neck. Do you kind of see where I'm coming from now? The Legend CJ, how much money will you be happy Superman Legacy making to be successful? Look, the magic marker is $1 billion. I think they'll be very, very happy with anything that hits 750 and above. I think if Superman Legacy was to do 750 to $1 billion, they'd be very happy. They'd be extremely happy with $1 billion. I think they believe that Superman should make $1 billion. Batman should make $1 billion. And if you put Superman and Batman together, like in BVS, they should be making $2 billion. It's not rocket science. Do the math. Spider-Man No Way Home, Maguire, Garfield, Holland in one film, $2 billion. Of course they should expect that. 3 different Spider-Men, popular Spider-Men, Batman and Superman in the same movie and not even $1 billion. That's a disaster. You can't justify that. You can't. MSG, it was about building 6th MCU movie, Avengers 6th DCEU movie, Aquaman. It was not so much about just the characters. WB had to build an audience. Well, let me explain something to you, MSG, because I think what you're driving at is that they should have been allowed to take their time to build an audience. But let me explain something to you. Zack Snyder's movies are fucking expensive. That Aquaman movie, did you see the revolutionary effects? That film cost a lot of money. It needed to make that $1 billion. Thankfully, it did for them. But Snyder's movies, near on cost $300 million a movie, nearly. He's a very expensive filmmaker because of the visuals. And he does a lot. So his films need to make more money than some of the others. Joker movie didn't even cost $100 million to make, and he made over $1 billion without China, right? So they have every right to expect big returns for big investments. It's not a charity. I mean, we can have a conversation if the capitalist system is right, and if it's is it about art or is it about money? Well, they need to, Warner Brothers are on their fucking knees. So you have to have the IPs and the blockbusters so you can have the arty movies. You can't have one without the other. And that's how Hollywood's always been able to do things. You need your total recalls so you can have a little film, right? If Total Recall isn't successful back in the 90s, then that studio couldn't have done a smaller film, whatever they did in that year. It's a balance, right? So you can have a bit of everything. You can have small films, you can have big films. But without successful IPs and blockbusters, a studio cannot exist. A cinema doesn't make money on the sale of tickets. The cinema makes money on the confectionaries, on the drinks that it sells you. That's why they're so expensive. That's where the money is, right? Basically, the ticket sales, that's how they pay their taxes every year. And that's how it works, because those ticket sales money, they don't get 100% of that. They have to give some of that to the studio as well, of course. And they get a very small percentage of that. Remember, Shitty, of course it's about money, but if Garfield and Maguire were not Spider-Man men in the past, that latest Spider-Man movie would have not so easily made what it did. Yeah, if they weren't, but they were in that film, right? And here's the point, MSG2. A film with Batman and Superman in it can't make 850 million. It can't. However you blag it, however you sell it, however you do the con job on it, however you play it, that ain't good enough. That film, they want, as I say, BVS was a very expensive film. Again, nearly 300 million budget. And, they want that money back and then some. And that's understandable. They placed faith in Zack Snyder to bring them back the money. And he didn't, because he just wanted to do his own thing. He wasn't, they thought he was, that he understood he was working for a mainstream movie company, but he thought he was making the most expensive independent superhero movie of all time. So, yes, but at the end of the day, a Spider-Man movie should be bringing in $1 billion. I don't think that's the Spider-Man No Way Home brought in $1 billion. I'm not sure about Spider-Man Homecoming. Definitely didn't bring in $1 billion. And people were grumbling about that, and the studio weren't happy about that. And then that's, I think, ultimately why they did Spider-Man No Way Home, because they kind of suspected that Holland's Spider-Man was never going to bring in $1 billion on its own. Spider-Man is one of the biggest characters, even between DC and Marvel. He's Marvel's biggest characters. And, that character should be bringing in $1 billion as well. So when you pull the Spider-Man in, that's why they did it, to reach that money, right? So I can point the finger at Spider-Man movie, but again, Spider-Man No Way Home and Spider-Man Homecoming probably at least made 750 to 800, the same as the Batman did, and that's a respectable figure, right? MSGT, but that's my point. 6 Superman movies, 7 Batman movies. To expect Batman and Superman to make $1 billion simply because it's Superman and Batman is ridiculous. No, GT, it is not ridiculous. It is not ridiculous, because you're talking about hugely popular characters. Did you see the opening? The opening was record-breaking. Then they had a big drop-off. The opening was huge because that opening proves that you're wrong, MSGT. Proves that you're wrong, because that opening said, "Oh my God, Batman and Superman! We got to go and see this. The trailers look exciting, lots of action, right?" But when they go and see the film, it disappoints them. So the rewatches go down, and it has the biggest slide in movie history, because people like Batman and Superman, but they didn't like the movie that Batman and Superman's in. We're not talking about $1 billion for Batman versus Superman. Oh no, Batman versus Superman should have made $2 billion. It should have made Avatar money. Simple as that. Force Awakens money. That is the reality of the situation. This is how popular and iconic Superman and Batman are. And it doesn't matter what excuse you come up with, MSGT, right? And I respect you. In your opinion, there's no way you can justify that film only making 850. I like the film. I love the film. I can enjoy watching it. But as a company, if you were running that company and you've given someone 300 odd million to make a movie, you'd want a huge profit. It's not a game, and it's not a charity, and it's not a director's plaything to make fan fiction. MSGT, it took Batman Begins first of Dark Knight to head towards greater numbers. Batman Begins didn't cost 300 million. Batman Begins barely cost 100 million. Batman Begins is a very good movie that didn't make a lot of money, but there wasn't a big investment riding in it. And they believed in Nolan enough to let him do that second movie. And the second and third movie made $1 billion. So kind of made up. But the investment of Batman Begins wasn't so huge. So they didn't actually make a loss. Basically, Batman Begins is pretty much the same as the first Shazam movie. Made just under 400 million, basically. Under 100 million to make. They were more than happy with that because they believed in Nolan. MSGT, oh, you are right. I concede on that one. Massive drop after initial release does say something. Even the critics said that the ultimate cut would have made more than the theatrical. Yeah, we have to talk about the studio interference because they didn't believe in what Snyder was doing, so they cut half an hour out of the movie. And ultimately, the original theatrical cut simply didn't make sense within the narrative, and they fucked it up. Now, whether or not the ultimate cut or the original Snyder cut of BVS, the 3-hour cut, would have made critics be nicer to it, we will never know. But I think they still would have had major issues with the film. The Legend CJ, I remember watching BVS as a kid and couldn't wait with my friends to see it and came out disappointed. It's a good movie, but not the way it was portrayed in the trailers. Now that, The Legend CJ, the marketing was very problematic. Let me tell you how I reacted to Batman versus Superman. I thought this film was emotionally and visually breathtaking. I came out and I had no emotions left. I thought it was amazing. I did find it sad that Superman died. And when I see him make the sacrifice, I think that's my Superman, making the sacrifice, not letting Wonder Woman sacrifice her life, but actually sacrificing his own life, because that's who Superman is. I think it was a brilliant movie. I had a great experience, even with the theatrical cut in the cinema. Now, let's talk about the marketing. They were trying to market this film as a popcorn chomping WWF brawl between Batman and Superman. That's why they called it Batman versus Superman. That's not the movie Snyder was making. So they were trying to lie. So we compare it to the marketing of Logan. Logan is a very noir kind of movie. There's even a black and white version. And the marketing, they're not scared of that marketing. They're quite proud of the film. They know what it is. The studio are not trying to fool you into it thinking it's a Bryan Singer X-Men movie. This is a different type of movie by Mangold, and they're not hiding it. But BVS, they were ashamed of the movie. They didn't think it would make money, so they sold it as something else, hoping that when you saw the movie, you'd be happy. And because they missold the movie, I think this is part of the problems with BVS. When people went to see it, it wasn't the movie they expected it to be. And you know what, The Legend CJ, you make a fantastic point there. The marketing was part of the problem as well, but everything was a problem. The marketing, what Snyder was trying to do, these are not things you do for this type of audience, right? This audience wants, people talk about the Marvel formula. This audience that you're catering to, the general audience that you need, want Marvel. And that's where you are. And didn't want the Snyderverse. And you can't force people to want something that they don't want. The consumer is king. The consumer is not as stupid as companies think they are. The consumer knows exactly what it wants. And if they don't get it, they'll reject it. Then I just say, how would you rewrite BVS? I wouldn't rewrite somebody else's art. I would never rewrite. That film is a bloody good film. If you got that in an Elseworld, or you tell the audience that this is part of this is a 5-movie arc on an Injustice adaptation, then the audience and all those gamers are going to come in, and it is going to make the billions and 2 billions because people are going to be excited because you've communicated with them what it's going to be. I wouldn't rewrite BVS because I like BVS. If you're asking me how I would rewrite it for a general audience, you can't. That's not a film you should make for a general audience. The Legend CJ, you can't rewrite it. This is what they did with Justice League. What you're asking my opinion of there is this is what the studio told Joss Whedon to do. Rewrite it for a general audience. You can't rewrite the Snyder Cut into Justice League and think it's going to make money. That's the mistake they made. So I would never want to rewrite BVS because BVS is perfect as it is, as his movie. But he was selling it to the wrong audience. The studio was selling it to the wrong audience. This is how messy and degenerate these people are. They haven't got a clue to think that Zack Snyder could make movies for a general audience when he had no intention of making movies for a general audience. MSGT, I would explain out what Martha meant to where Batman's head was in that moment. I feel there was a missed opportunity to really nail down some Batman psyche. That Martha moment is a very interesting thing because, I mean, I didn't even notice the upper lip dodginess with Cavill until people pointed it out. But in terms of the Martha moment, I never sat there and thought it was stupid. I thought it was emotional, and I thought it was very sad, and I thought it was an interesting way to stop them to fight. The problem with the Martha moment is that you've got Superman calling his mother Martha for obvious reasons, because he obviously, Terrio wants to click into Bruce Wayne's psyche there, Martha, because imagine it. Your mum's dead, and this guy is saying your mum's name. Is he talking about my mum? Is my mum actually alive? What's going on here? Like, you can see in Ben Affleck's performance, which is great. Why is he saying this woman's name? It's a good idea that's badly executed. And it simply got made fun of because, again, the audience, the consumer, are not dumb. When you do something in the wrong way, if you execute something wrongly, and that was executed wrongly, and I don't even know if there's a right way of doing that. I think the Martha moment is one of those ideas you have as a writer, and then you think, nah, I'm going to do this because I can't put it in a way that works. Because if you do the whole thing, they're going to kill my mother, it can still work. That would kind of maybe make Batman stop. But what they wanted to do is say these two have got the two mothers with the same name. So they're not so different after all. It's not an alien versus a human. It's just two people with a mum. That's what they're trying to do. It's very deep. But it's simply, you can't make it work. And if you think you can't make it work as a writer, you should never say, nah, it'll be fine. That's what Terrio did, basically. He just did what he wanted to do and said, nah, they'll get it if they don't fuck them. That was the attitude. And the audience are a lot smarter. So the audience showed Chris Terrio they were a lot smarter than him. It's not a bad idea, but you can't just do something for the sake of doing it as a writer, as a storyteller, just because you want to do it. If you have doubts in your head, and I'm sure he did, that this is not going to work. So how can I reframe this? And you can't reframe it, really. It's a bit difficult. So at the end of the day, if you think something's not going to work, don't do it. No matter how sold on it and obsessed you are on the idea yourself, at the end of the day, you save it for another story that it may work in. That would work in a soap opera, right? That would work in a dramatic story, a non-superhero story. But I just think people saw through it. That's why people ripped the piss out of it. The Legend CJ, the only thing I would change is not killing off Superman. That was way too early, and it don't have the impact that it should have had. Right, to me, watching it, it had within the story itself, not necessarily as franchise, but the story itself, it worked for me. The problem is, Batman versus Superman is taking The Dark Knight Returns and the death of Superman and squeezing elements of it into one film. Those are two graphic novels, so special. You take them, you copy and paste them into live action, and as an artist, you make them wonderful. You don't do that. You don't squeeze them into one movie, sections of them. It was too early. It was a mistake, but that was the whole point of that film, was killing off Superman. You don't kill off Superman in the end, and you don't do all the foreshadowing throughout the film. And it's a different film. And then you have to go a different direction. MSGT, I thought it was brilliant, but the meaning went over a lot of people's heads. And while he was watching helpless, Lois protects Superman. Batman saw himself as the villain. He was disgusted. MSGT, the Legend CJ, that sums up the problem right there. Audience expected an MCU-like build where Snyder was telling a closed story. Should not have been the start of DCU. Well, that's the point. They marketed BVS like a Marvel movie. That's the point. They marketed it like a WWF brawl. I mean, some of the trailers had some interesting depth to them, but mostly this was roll up tonight. In the left corner, it's Batman, and in the right corner, it's the red, yellow, and blue of Superman. That's how they were selling the film. But that film wasn't a WWF brawl between Batman and Superman. Snyder and Terrio were making something deeper, but the audience weren't expecting that. They were sold something else, and that's the problem. It's not just a case of saying, well, people expected the wrong thing. You can't blame the audience. If I'm standing on stage and the audience don't applaud, you can't blame the audience. You've got to blame yourself, your execution, your writing, your performance. It's up to the people making the entertainment to make it entertaining and make it. It's not just about it being entertaining, for it to work. And when it doesn't work, it's on you, the orchestrator, the artist. If you draw a painting and they don't know what the painting is, it ain't their fault, it's your fault. And what we get in entertainment today is blaming the consumer, blaming the fan. No, you can't pass the buck. If it doesn't have the reception and the reaction you wanted it to, you did something wrong. It's as simple as that. And it's interesting. I don't remember the marketing or the trailers. Well, you should go back and check them out. They're all on YouTube. But yeah, the marketing wasn't selling the film that Zack was making. Simple as that. Batman versus Superman. They asked Michael Shannon who do you think's going to win. He said, I don't care. And I think ultimately people were scratching their heads wondering why they were making such a big deal in a movie about Batman and Superman fighting, two allies. There could be some, drama between them when they first meet, but they took it down another level. Batman was branding people, for fuck's sake. They went too deep. This is not a general audience movie. This is something else you do for a different audience. And it simply didn't work for the audience that it was made for. Snyder was making a movie, right? Whatever you want to call it, and a cult movie for the general audience. And it didn't work. And any producer, any CEO who saw that movie, and apparently they loved BVS at the time when they first saw it, would have known this is going to be a disaster because the audience we're selling this to isn't going to want this. Anyone could have told them that. So very problematic. So when you get to the interviews and someone says to them, you've got, we get the unhappy Affleck bit. Affleck can't believe that people are ripping on this movie. Totally unprepared for what's going to happen. The whole thing was disastrous. And maybe at the time when all the shit was hitting the fans, even I didn't understand the hate for it. But you're taking something absolutely iconic and you're doing something, you might as well just write original characters and do your own thing. And then people may even like what you're doing. But there's an expectation that Batman's going to be a certain way. There's an expectation that Superman's going to be a certain way. And it wasn't that. And that's why we are. And as I keep saying, you can't force people to want things the way you want them, right? To be. And people already had an opinion of Zack since Watchmen. He pissed a lot of people off with Watchmen. So when it was announced he was doing a Superman movie, people were already pissed off and triggered and ready to go for him. So the leash was short, right? And in a way, it's the way the Snyder fans feel about James Gunn. He's on a short leash. And if he fucks up, he'll end up like Snyder did with Man of Steel and BVS. We will see. I mean, the difference with James Gunn and Zack Snyder, James Gunn's got the mainstream audience. He's got the trust of the general audience and the younger audience because they love Guardians, right? Neither of the Guardians films have made $1 billion, but they've done okay, good money. But they've never made $1 billion. I didn't realize that. I thought they made more money than they actually did. That's kind of interesting. There's a big fuss made about the box office for the first Guardians. I always assumed it made $1 billion, but it didn't. So, yeah, very, very interesting. I certainly do like the first Guardians film. I think it's a very good film in terms of a broad appeal to be entertaining. And when that film finishes, you do start walking around like the Guardians to a bit of music. It's very inspiring. It does feel like it makes you feel like you felt when you watched the first Star Wars film when you were a kid. So, and that's the idea of it. He's not, people got to understand that James Gunn isn't Francis Ford Coppola or Martin Scorsese, but he's good at what he does. But what he's being asked to do by Warner Brothers Discovery is actually mold the clay and set up a whole franchise. This is simply something he's never been asked to do before. So this is where the interesting thing's going to be, if he and Peter can pull this off. MSGT, right, it made no sense for me for WB to know what to expect from Nolan and Snyder, yet they welcomed them anyway. Well, they knew that Snyder, they worked with Snyder with Watchmen, they knew exactly what they were getting. They knew that Nolan would probably bring in someone like Snyder, which he did. So Nolan was a mistake. The only reason they got involved with Nolan is because he made them $2 billion with BVS, The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Both those films made about $2 billion. They were thinking of the box office, but they weren't thinking about his mentality to DC. And he had no knowledge in DC. That's why he had Goya writing with him, because he had no knowledge. So he was absolutely the wrong person. Now, ironically, if you from the beginning brought in Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns before anything had been done with Snyder, I bet you any money the DCEU would have ended up being successful. But you bring in Johns and you get him involved with someone like Snyder. Johns believes in the ethics of DC, and Snyder believes in subverting expectations. Those two were always going to clash because Johns is trying to protect what DC is, and Snyder is protecting his own work. So that was never going to work. And you can say that this one's wrong and that one's right. I don't believe it's as simple as that. You got one person. Jeff Johns started with nothing. He started off as a runner for Richard Donner, the director of Superman the movie, and built his career up and became a comic book writer. He's written many great comics. He even invented a version of Stargirl based on his dead sister. So, these are the problems. And, what happens is everyone takes a side on the internet and says, this is the good guy, that's the bad guy. It ain't as simple as that. You've got a situation on Justice League, on the shoe of Justice League. You've got Ray Fisher being difficult because he's trying to protect Zack Snyder's movie. But the decision's already been made and he's rebelling and he's causing them problems. So then Johns gets involved and kind of maybe threatens him a bit and says, you better watch your career because Ray Fisher is being fucking impossible. And they're just trying to get him to finish the damn movie. But they made a mistake in the beginning, getting rid of Zack and trying to do the Whedon thing. That was a mistake anyway. Delaney says, if Superman didn't kill Zack at the end of Man of Steel, how much money do you think it would have made? Nearly $1 billion. That is the reason. There's other moments. People didn't like the destruction and all of that, but they would have gotten away with it. If it wasn't for the neck-breaking incident, Superman killing was a deal breaker for many, many people. If he doesn't break the guy's neck, right, and then crack a joke and have a woman cracking a joke about him being hot straight afterwards, right? Obviously, I personally think that film makes $1 billion or at least 850, and they'd be more happy with that. It took weeks and weeks to even get 200 million. I think to hit 200 million in America, it took its time, and everyone kept on saying, is it ever going to hit 200 million? So, yeah, and this is a Superman movie. So, and there's expectations. Look, no Superman movie has ever made $1 billion, but if you translate the finances of Superman the movie from 1978 to today, then I think that Superman the movie made well over $1 billion on, with its release globally. Because it's not Superman the movie's fault that it was released in 1978 when the money was counted differently and valued differently. So 200 million at the time was huge for Superman the movie. Huge. Films didn't make that kind of money just like that back then. So, actually, Superman the movie made about 400 million, I think, something like that. Anyway, nowadays that's not a lot, but the value of money has changed. So if you translate that value of money, Superman the movie made a hell of a lot of money in modern day terms. So in that element, if you're looking at it like that, Superman the movie is the most successful Superman movie of all time and made shitloads more than Man of Steel. But because people have an agenda, they don't want to look at it like that. MSGT, right. I've grown to really appreciate your insights, Mick. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so, because what I like to do is explain things. I do it on my Twitter. Explain things. Like some Snyder fans are hating on Christopher Reeve or something, but they don't understand that all they're thinking about is their echo chamber. All they're thinking about is what they want and what they like. But they don't understand. It's like Nixon. President Nixon never could understand why the world loved John F. Kennedy, but hated him. And there were reasons. It was presentation, for example. Nixon was rough, ready, the way he spoke, yet he didn't even have manners. Now, Kennedy knew how to bullshit his way round and look like a gentleman. I mean, some of the stuff he was doing, right? Shagging Monroe, cheating on his wife, terrible human being. Probably a great president, right? But a really bad person. But he fooled the world into thinking that he was a nice family guy. Presentation. And so Nixon hated Kennedy for being loved. So the Snyder fans hate Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve for being loved and for Zack Snyder being hated, because Zack Snyder's a bit like Richard Nixon. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about his presentation. He doesn't care if you like him or not. He's going to make the fucking movie he wants to make, and he don't give a shit if you like it or not. And there is the difference. The legend suggests, as of now, is Reeve still the best Superman to you? Yes, Christopher Reeve is the best Superman. I can give you a billion reasons why he's the best Superman. First of all, this guy was a glider pilot. When he flew, his body shape made it look like he was flying. I mean, the special effects were revolutionary. And let's be clear here. Even if you go and watch today, if you go and watch Superman the movie now and you see how he flies, I still think it's the best set of flying. And this is not even computer generated. It's blue screen, not green screen. It's blue screen. And they've got background moving and he's gliding. But the way he flies looks fantastic. Superman barely flies in Man of Steel. But in Superman the movie, you see him fly in the third act. That moment when he's pushing to chase the rocket. It's still today a beautiful looking scene. And you don't see as much flying like that in Man of Steel. And I still think Donner's flying for Superman is the best that Superman has ever flown. And I want to see that. And I want to see more of that. I don't even think James Gunn will make Superman fly as much as Dick Donner, or make him fly as well as Dick Donner did. But right now, Superman the movie, for me, and Christopher Reeve, is the greatest thing we've seen in Superman. And then for me, it has to be Smallville. Smallville is a great achievement for DC and Superman. They created a franchise and they did a pre-Superman story that worked. And they did the character justice, let alone the justice they did for Lex Luthor as well. MSGT, adjusted for inflation, Superman the movie made, I'm not very good with numbers, but that's well over $1 billion, right? Well over $1 billion, right? Am I right? So Superman the movie is the most successful film, right? That's it. Now, idiots are going to say, but it only made 400 million, whatever it made, right? But back then, that was a huge amount of money. Then you have to measure it to what it is today. So Man of Steel wouldn't have been a very successful movie. Man of Steel in 1978 terms probably would have made 100 million, 200 million, right? Whatever it would have made. But Superman the movie changed everything. It made Superman famous. It made him more popular. You know, it's a bit like Iron Man, right? Superman was huge before Superman the movie. Of course he was. There was the George Reeves show. There was the comics. You know, he'd been huge. You know, the soldiers in World War II were reading him. Wonder Woman. He was huge. Ronnie Dodge. Hey, Mick. Good evening, Ronnie. And that's the thing. So Superman the movie is absolutely the most successful Superman movie in so many different ways. And this is why some of these Snyder fans don't like it. They don't understand why people like that movie, that old-fashioned movie, because it has charm. It has personality. It has romance. It actually has romance. as well as action, as well as Superman going after a villain. He's not fighting a villain, but the stuff he's doing is still cool. And it's done in a very emotional way. And that's why that film is still loved. And that film is people's childhoods. And it's nostalgic. There's a lot of reasons people like that film. Ronnie Dodge, I'm excited for Superman Legacy. And it looks like, so am I, and it looks like James Gunn may be directing that. Looks like he is going to direct it. I think he will, unless he doesn't want his time taken up. But I think he's going. That's an important film, isn't it? So yeah. But yeah, Superman the movie. I always knew Superman the movie was the most successful movie. But I can't be bothered to be bashing my head against a brick wall with a bunch of idiots who don't get it, who don't get, who say, well, Man of Steel is the most successful Superman movie. No, it's not. Man of Steel, I like it, but it is no way, in a lot of ways, not a successful film. In lots of ways, not just with box office. At the end of the day, this is Superman. And, when Warner Brothers look at Superman, this is why in the past they've been very cautious about letting certain people touch Superman. For example, the Tim Burton Superman, they stopped him from making it because they were protective of the property. Ronnie George, I hate to compare, but Superman will be like Cap from the MCU. Look, in the history, Captain America and Superman have been very, very similar. But yeah, I don't know. Look, we don't know what he's doing. This may be, set in the past. Now, it probably won't be, but you just don't know. You just don't know. They may not the DC universe may not be set in contemporary times. And I've already said it. He may be setting up the JSA instead of the Justice League, instead of the JL. So in fact, you never know. This DCU may be set in the past, and that will be interesting. And I think when you look at some of the projects, interesting. Who knows? Obviously I could be wrong, but I think it's a possibility. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think there's things that we don't know. We don't know very much. We know a bit more this week because of the little bit of the slate we got. But I still don't think we know the plan, the real plan. There's no question. It's been pretty clear. The Flash movie changes everything dramatically because he's already given Andy Muschietti notes ages ago. So those changes have already been made. So it's interesting. Ronnie Dodge, all need is a giant globe on the Daily Planet in Legacy. The Legend CJ, I think Creature Commandos is set in the past during World War II. Yes, this is interesting, isn't it? Because it's a DCU project, but it's set during that time. This is what I'm saying. Maybe the whole universe is set then. And what is the advantage of setting a superhero universe in the past? I'll tell you. You don't have to worry about certain things. You don't have to be contemporary. You don't have to represent certain things, if you know what I mean. And people can't get at you for certain things not being there. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if we're going for the JSA instead of the Justice League and it's set in the past. When I do my DC Universe Daily video tomorrow, I might make that a talking point through the video. And I'll have some conversations about that because, yeah, that's interesting. I would love that. I might even prefer the DCU being set in the past rather than the present. Because I don't think there's anything that interesting about our present time. It's not really a unique time to be alive. It's a very negative time to be alive. What's so unique about the times we live in? We just sit on the internet pressing buttons all fucking day and talking shit. We don't go anywhere. We don't do anything. It's shit. It's a shit world. Sorry to depress you on a Saturday night, but I'd much rather focus a superhero universe in the past because the past is better. I envy my dad that he grew up in the 50s and 60s. Imagine the shit they were doing. the world that they saw. Look at the world we've got now. In 30 years' time, no one's looking back, at this era and saying, wow, that was great. What about that song? What about that film? People ain't going to be saying that because everything's a rip-off from the past anything. There's nothing original about the era we live in. So I absolutely love this franchise, this DCU, to be set in the past. And the more I talk about it now, the more excited I get because I think it could be a thing. And I think that would be really, really cool. I love stuff that's set in the past. I do. Because I really take a deep look at the characters and think, imagine if that was me. Imagine a young person being in the Second World War from these contemporary times. Wouldn't it last fucking 5 minutes? So Legend CJ, if Superman was a real hero, how do you think the world would react? In reality, an alien with all the power of Superman, it's an interesting thing. I think if he shows to be a hero, I think he's like everything, isn't it? It's like Donald Trump. It's like, the young girl who's trying to save the earth, right? Some people like her, some people hate her. And I think that's what it would be like for Superman. Some people would believe in him and some people wouldn't. Because the world will always be split in half. There'll always be people who want to not trust, and there'll be people who want to automatically trust. And sometimes the people who are suspicious are right to be suspicious, and the ones who are being trusting are being naive, and it ends in tears. And sometimes the trusting ones are right and the distrusting ones are wrong. It depends. Depends on the situation. MSGT, that was the point of MOS and BVS. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I think if you're in an else world, that works. But no one from the general audience saying, yeah, put Supes in the real world. That's what I've always wanted to see. No. MSGT, fans didn't want to see how the real world might react. Well, let me give you a scenario. And I used to say this all the time. There used to be a soap called EastEnders, still is, and people used to show off that it was so realistic, it was so gritty. And my point as a kid was, if I wanted to see the real world, I'd get a chair and sit on my pavement and watch the world pass me by. People need an escape. And Superman is the escape people need. And if you put him in the real world and certain characters like him, then you're stuck. And what we're doing today with entertainment, we keep on making reality dramas. We keep on making things that are set in the real world, that are contemporary. And we have this social commentary and that social commentary. There is no escape for children and young people. And then you wonder why young people are suicidal and depressed. Not having an escape is very harmful to people. For example, when I was a kid, I had Looney Tunes, I had Bugs Bunny to escape to, I had Superman, I had Star Wars. This was all fantasy. But today, entertainers are obsessed with the real fucking world. But the real world is shit. And you're forcing our heads in the real world. There's nothing more depressing to me than telling me I can't have an escape. I watch The Simpsons, I can escape. I watch Family Guy, I can escape. I watch American Dad, I can escape. I don't want to sit on my ass watching the real world and seeing real world commentary all the time. I don't mind, like in the old days growing up, there was stuff like that, but it was handled in a more intelligent way than it was done today. So yeah, exactly, MSGT. People didn't want to see that. Not with Superman. There's things you can do. Growing up, there was great Vietnam movies that were set in a world that we didn't know, yes, but it was asking a huge question. It was exposing the Vietnam War, which of course, with nationalists and people who agree with war, it's a trigger for them. But to other people, say, yeah. So things were different then. The Legend CJ, do you think Batman and Superman are already friends in the DCU? That's an interesting question. I think, have they already met? You see, this is going to be very interesting. We're either going to see their first meeting, or listen, think about it. Think about it like this, The Legend CJ. He's been Superman for about 2 years, I think, in the DCU, in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's DCU. So I think there's every chance that he's heard of him. They've heard of each other, but maybe they haven't crossed paths yet. And I think that's probably the way it will be. So I think Superman may actually meet him for the first time. Maybe they haven't met yet, but there are heroes in this world. Now, the question is there a Justice League? It's going to be very interesting to see when this is set, because that's something I haven't thought of, when this franchise is set. We assumed it will be contemporary, but it's interesting. So I think they nerve each other, but maybe they haven't met yet. Right, everyone, we're going to wrap this live up. We've nearly been here for 2 hours. Wow, another brilliant, interesting conversations, bunch of conversations. Been really fun. It's 20 to midnight here in Cyprus, so definitely better wrap things up. It's been great talking to you all. Hope you enjoyed the chat. Smash the like on your way out. And I will be back tomorrow for the DC Universe Daily, either pre-recorded or live. And we'll get some talking points done. Maybe get into my point about when the DCU will be set. As I say, that's really something that, you know, the cool kids haven't really been thinking about. So yeah, I think that's something else. I think we're going to get a few surprises at the end of the Flash movie. And I think not everything is going to end in that movie the way we're expecting it to do in terms of where we're going to be. Very, very interesting. Also, in the context of Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, are they part of the new universe? Are they still part of the old timeline? That's something that's going to be interesting as well. And I think after the Flash movie, James Gunn's going to have to answer some questions, because I think some people won't really get it. So it's going to be very interesting. So doing a great chat as usual. So keep coming back so we can talk. I've had a great time. Thank you for interacting with me tonight. MSGT, laters, Mick. The Legend CJ, I want at the end of the Flash for a new Barry Allen casting to happen. That will be brilliant. I don't think we're going to get that, but who knows what they are planning and what notes he gave Andy Machete to change at the end of that movie. This has been Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most, just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Thank you very much, everyone. See you tomorrow.